the people.
The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Matthew. Glory to you, O Lord. At that time, Jesus withdrew to the region of Tyre and Sidon, and behold, a Canaanite woman of that district came and called out, "Have pity on me, Lord, Son of David. My daughter is tormented by a demon." But Jesus did not say a word in answer to her. Jesus' disciples came and asked him, "Send her away, for she keeps calling out after us." He said in reply, "I was sent only to the lost sheep of the house of Israel." But the woman came and did Jesus homage, saying, "Lord, help me." He said in reply, "It is not right to take the food of the children and throw it to the dogs." She said, "Please, Lord, for even the dogs eat the scraps that fall from the table of their masters." Then Jesus said to her in reply, "O woman, great is your faith. Let it be done for you as you wish." And the woman's daughter was healed from that hour. The Gospel of the Lord. In the spring of 2001, it was the first time that Mandy and I walked through those glass doors back there into a Catholic church. See, we had been invited to the baptism of the first child of one of our good friends, Philip and Bernadette Glick, and it was going to be after the 11:30 Mass. Now, they knew that we weren't Catholic and said that we didn't have to come to the Mass, but we thought, why not? After all, we're looking for a church home. Now, we found out there was another reason that they told us that we didn't have to come to the Mass, because neither they nor any of their other family showed up for the Mass that day. But I still remember what it was like coming to that first Mass. Back then, the cathedral had greeters that stood out in the west vestibule, greeting people and shaking hands. And I don't know who it was, but I know that a very nice lady came up and greeted Mandy and myself and said hello and then commented on my beautiful tie. Now, we told her we weren't Catholic and we told her we were here for a baptism, and so she directed us to one of the back pews where so many people are seated today, because she thought we'd be more comfortable back there. And so I remember thinking during the Mass, wow, this is really reverent and more like what I thought church should be. But after the baptism, we didn't give it another thought because we weren't Catholic. And no one, not even our friends, invited us to consider making the cathedral our church home. Funny enough, it wouldn't be until 3 years later in 2004 that we'd begin our Catholic journey back through those same glass doors. But that's another story. Today we hear from Isaiah, "All who keep the Sabbath free from profanation and hold my covenant, them I will bring to my holy mountain and make joyful in my house of prayer. Their burnt offerings and sacrifices will be acceptable on my altar, for my house shall be called a house of prayer for all peoples." So, To all of you who are joining us in person or on the live stream for the first time today, welcome to the Cathedral of St. Joseph. This is a house of prayer for all peoples, and we would love for you to make this your church home. See, this is a house of all kinds of prayer. And today you will experience one of the highest and most sublime prayer of the church, the Holy Mass. See, the Mass is not merely a prayer addressed to God by human beings. In the Eucharistic sacrifice, Christ himself offers the perfect sacrifice of praise and thanksgiving to the Father on behalf of the church. And every one of us here are united to that offering through him. Now, that doesn't mean that your personal experience of the Mass is going to be deeper or more fervent than your private prayer. See, your personal prayer and your devotions remain genuine and have great value. But this prayer, the Eucharistic prayer, brings us to the place where, like the Canaanite woman, we too can say, "Have pity on me, Lord, Son of David." See, just like that Canaanite woman, I had to walk through the desert. See, we hear she came from Tyre and Sidon. And Origen tells us that Tyre in Hebrew means the nations, and that Sidon means the hunters. In other words, they were the Gentiles, or the sinners. She's making an exodus out of the land of sin. See, this isn't just movement on a map. It's movement in her heart. It's a spiritual conversion. She's not just walking towards Jesus physically. She's walking away from her former life entirely. She's confessing what Israel is refusing. She's recognizing the Messiah. St. John Chrysostom viewed this scripture as a school of endurance. And he marvels at how the more she urgently presses Christ to answer her prayer, the more intensely he seems to deny her. Yet far from breaking her, this sharpening forged her faith into something greater. Chrysostom says, the woman practices high self-command and shows forth all endurance and faith while receiving insult. She acknowledges her low state and yet insists that even a dog is not forbidden the crumbs. Brothers and sisters, the Christian life is an exodus through the desert. The road home requires faith strong enough to persevere and keep walking. This passage of Scripture confronts us with one of the most uncomfortable and most fruitful questions in prayer. What do we do when God is silent? What do you do when you've prayed for your child to come back to the church and nothing happens? What do you do when you've begged God to heal someone you love and they only seem to get worse? What do you do when you've gone to confession, changed your life, and tried to leave your old sins behind, and suddenly those old temptations come calling again? And what do you do when you've done everything you thought God asked you to do, and yet God is still silent? You keep walking. You keep praying. See, that's what Israel struggled to do in the desert. When things became difficult, they wanted to turn around. They wanted to go back to Egypt. See, it's one thing to have enough faith to leave Egypt. It's another thing to have enough faith to keep walking through the desert. St. Augustine sees in the Canaanite woman a soul that refuses to take Christ's silence as a no. She doesn't interpret Jesus' silence as absence, nor his harsh words as a closed door. Instead, she persists. She adjusts her posture from crying out to kneeling down in humility. And she strips her petition to its barest and most honest form. Lord, help me. Notice, she doesn't ask for what one might think they deserve. She merely asks for what falls from the table of the Master. That is the posture of authentic Christian prayer. Not demanding what we think we're owed, but begging for mercy. The saints see in this woman nothing less than a perfect icon of faith. She is persistent without being presumptuous. She's humble without being hopeless, bold without being arrogant. She is, in the words of the fathers, what the disciples were not yet, and what every Christian is called to become. 25 years ago, Mandy and I walked through those doors, outsiders. We weren't Catholic. We didn't know where this road would lead. We were just looking for a church home. But God knew. He was leading us on our own exodus. He knew there would be plenty of desert ahead. And maybe that's where you are today. Maybe you've started walking towards Christ, but right now all you can see is desert. Maybe you've been praying, and God seems to be silent. Keep walking. Have faith. Be patient. Humble yourself before Him. Persevere. And when you don't know what else to pray, simply say, Lord, help me. Because this is His house, a house of prayer for all peoples. And Christ has not called us out of the desert to just leave us begging for crumbs. He has brought us home and invited us to His table.